What's up, Spider-Man Nation? This is episode number 6 of Spider-Man's Tangled WebShow. We did an episode last week after our bit of a hiatus, but we're back again this week. We're trying to make up a bit for lost time, I guess you could call it. What are we talking about today? Well, first of all, we got some news to talk about, and we're going to talk about some back issues. Since there really wasn't any Amazing Spider-Man this week, and when I say really wasn't, I mean there actually wasn't an issue of Amazing Spider-Man this week. We don't have any new comics to talk about. I'm not even sure what Spider-Man books came out this week. I know there was an issue of Spider-Man and the X-Men. I'm not sure what else there was, if there was anything else.
This week, but don't quote me on it.
I'm not sure. I know there was a crap ton last week, but I'm not sure about this week. But as always, I'm your host, Jonathan, and with me we have James, that guy who just said something there. How's it going, James?
Pretty good, John.
Behind him, he has a Kiss poster because he is into that hard rock mode, I guess.
Which it's kind of funny because for years, Gene Simmons of Kiss goes around saying, "Oh yeah, I'm the guy who invented doing this at rock shows." Bullshit, because frickin' Gene Simmons himself is an admitted big-time comic book nerd. He can name off who was a ghost artist in an issue of Archie in the 1940s, and yet to the point that he was annoying Stan Lee when they did the Kiss comics in the 70s, asking him all these questions about Marvel in the 60s, and he claims that he came up with this. Everybody knows where he got this from. Doctor Strange, and of course,
The Amazing Bagman?
Yeah, Amazing Bagman.
Obviously. So, what do we don't have any other panelists on here today. We weren't able to get anybody else. Jan decided to abandon us, and that's an Iron Man Coke bottle. That's awesome. Let me tell you, I'm seeing the Avengers on everything now. I'm pretty sure I saw the Avengers on a bottle of Windex the other day. That was a bit.
They're on Doritos. I know that for a fact because it's like Cool Ranch's Cap. And regular Doritos, because it's the red cover, is Iron Man.
The Avengers are on literally everything now. But I mean, of course they're on everything because they're about to be in a hit movie. Which no matter how, I mean, that movie's not going to get bad reviews because I'm just going to say it right now, it's a freaking Joss Whedon Avengers movie. And if the trailers are anything to go by, it's going to be pretty good. But that movie's going to make money. That movie's going to make more money than that movie's going to put Michael Bay to shame.
Yeah, that movie is going to put Superman, Batman to shame, and that movie hasn't even come out yet. But like I told you, it just takes one mistake in Superman versus Batman, or Batman versus Superman, whatever the hell they're calling it. Whatever you want to say that. It just takes one mistake or one bad moment in that movie, and then Marvel's going to win. Just win. Because like people are going to say, well, it was that versus Avengers, and look who won. That will kill DC movies the way it sounds.
And let me tell you, though, I did, as a person, anyone who knows me knows that I have general apathy and general disinterest in DC in general. I did see the Batman versus Superman trailer. I appear to be the only person on Earth who kind of thinks that movie looks awesome. Apparently, but I will say though, I also know next to nothing about Batman or Superman. Obviously, I know their backstories and I know basically what those characters are meant to stand for. But I kind of like the way that trailer was playing up because I don't know. It was an interesting trailer. Will it get me into the movie theater? I don't know. I might go see Batman Superman, but it's going to take a lot. It's going to have to really intrigue me. James told me that he did not like the trailer at all.
It's too grimdark. I mean, DC, we get it. Batman and Robin and Green Lantern were a piece of crap, so every movie you make now has to be grimdark. We get it.
I have not seen Green Lantern, but Ryan Reynolds is in it, so you know it's not going to be good. No offense, Ryan Reynolds. To be honest, you're a smart man because you did marry Scarlett Johansson. But then you got a divorce, so that might cancel that out. Okay, I'm going to shut up. Tackling our first piece of news this week, we got some... Well, actually, when I say this week, it's really not this week, more like in the last 2 months, because even though we did do a show last week, we didn't tackle news. But even though we've been gone for 2 months, there hasn't been a whole lot of news to talk about. There have been a lot of rumors surrounding the new Marvel Spider-Man movie, but a lot of that is just that, rumors, and I don't think any of that's really worth talking about until it's fully confirmed by Marvel or Kevin Feige or whoever. So we're not.
I think we'll know something by Avengers. Not saying there's going to be an end credit scene. I'm not going to jump on the ball like everybody saying, well, there's going to be an end credit scene with Spider-Man. I'm not going to jump on it. I'm not saying that, but I think that at least sometime in between the day of launch of Avengers 2, Age of Ultron, to like maybe a month or two after that, we will get some news about Spider-Man.
Oh,
he's in cast and start filming and stuff like that, so they're going to be announcing cast and everything.
I have no doubt about that. And also, I just want to say I feel so sorry for the people who were so let down by Kevin Feige saying that there was not going to be any Spider-Man in Age of Ultron, because he was never going to be in Age of Ultron. It was never going to happen. It just wasn't, people. I'm sorry that you got your hopes up like that. I legitimately feel sympathy for you, because I never got my hopes up like that because I knew that was never going to happen.
At most, what we get is maybe I can see something like, now that they got the rights, something that you can do quick and easy, is during the credits, maybe after it's all done, you got like a web, and inside the web it says he's coming. But that's about it.
To be honest,
because they didn't say nothing. Because I watched the Daredevil show, I finished it. Daredevil on Netflix is awesome. They had Ben Urich in it. They had Kingpin, but those are Spider-Man characters who are also Daredevil characters, hence Daredevil having the rights to them. Plus, if you remember, Bill Urich wasn't working for the Bugle on that show. He's working for, I think it was like the Daily Bulletin. I think that's what they called it on it. And the producers or the writers outright said on Twitter, we didn't have the Spider-Man rights yet at Marvel, so we couldn't use the Bugle for Ben Urich's job. So that tells you, if that was being filmed around the same time as Avengers, that's telling you right there Spidey's not in this thing.
Exactly. So I would not say that we never had any chance of Spider-Man being in Avengers 2. But actually, Avengers are. I mean, I guess we could start with this topic now since we've already delved a little bit into it. But we do have some official information about the Marvel Cinematic Spider-Man film. Actually, thanks to Kevin Feige, he's been doing a lot of talking about Spider-Man on this Avengers Age of Ultron press tour. And he sat down with was it Collider? I think it was on Collider.com or something. And he sat down, he talked about Spider-Man, and the biggest news to come out of this was that it finally put to rest every single person on the internet who had this delusion that there was going to be Miles Morales. Okay, that was a bit insulting. But every single person on the internet who said that who was worried that it was going to be a Miles Morales film.
They're not worried.
And that Miles
that were cheering for it, begging for it, because I'm tired of Peter.
And I'm not even going to get into that, but basically, Peter Parker has been confirmed to be Spider-Man in the film, and he is going to be in high school around 15 or 16 years old. And, we'll start with those two things, basically. So, James, what are your thoughts on, first of all, a Peter Parker? I can't believe I'm even having to ask this question. Are you happy that it's a Peter Parker film, and are you happy that it's in high school?
Yes. Because I know people know I'm not a big Miles Morales fan, and that's true. And again, because people bring this up a lot of times for people who don't like Miles, it has nothing to do with his race. He could have been a white guy, and I wouldn't like. I just don't enjoy the character. But whatever, get that out of the way right now, because I know somebody's going to say that probably. Let me just say this: would I like to see a Miles movie one day? Yes, I think that could be very interesting to do. But like I said months ago when we did this topic, if you're doing Spider-Man in the Marvel Cinematic Universe for the first time, him meeting Cap, him meeting Thor, him meeting Iron Man, him meeting the Avengers, him fighting, their villains, all of that stuff, it's got to be Peter. If you make him Miles, it's going to, A, the audience can be like, who the hell is this guy? It's not Peter. The non-comic book fans. And B, it just feels like not that meaningful because it's not Peter Parker meeting them. It's Miles. Or it would be the same thing if it was Ben Reilly or Miguel O'Hara or any other Spider-Man-like character that's been around. If it's not Peter, it's just going to be like, ugh.
And I think part of the problem with introducing Miles Morales into the MCU first is that a fundamental aspect of Miles' character is that he is a successor to Peter Parker. He has to live up to the that Peter left as Spider-Man. That's a fundamental aspect of Miles' character from what I've seen. And if you make him the first Spider-Man in that universe, that completely destroys that aspect, and you'd have to reinvent a large portion of the character.
Well, yeah, well, like, think about it. Two of the big story arcs with Miles in, like, the last 2 years have been a version of Peter Parker telling him, yeah, it's okay, you can be Spider-Man. I'm passing the torch. I'm giving you my blessing. 616 Peter and the resurrected Ultimate Peter both had that word. You're the new Spider-Man. You go do it. You got Peter Parker's permission. That's pretty much is going to be Miles' thing. Is that he's constantly in Peter's shadow. If you do this, it's going to be just a kid in nobody's shadow, and you're losing a lot that makes Miles Miles, I think.
And plus, now with Secret Wars, we have Miles and Peter supposedly being in the same universe, thanks to I think the Ultimate Universe being completely destroyed, and so now they're both going to be in this big Battle World universe, which is raising a lot of questions about what are these two characters going to do to coexist.
I think they're going to combine in a. So what you're going to have is like Ultimate Cap is going to be like the origin of Captain America now is going to be the ultimate origin that Captain America that he had to fit into modern times, and you'll get like Miles, where you're going to have probably Peter give up being Spider-Man for a little while to raise his family with his daughter and Mary Jane, and then you're going to have Miles take over, and then when they decide right after Secret Wars or the aftermath to give you back swinging singing of Peter, I think they're going to do, they're going to either do a cosmic restart with Peter being young again, or they're just going to forget that Miles exists, or have Miles go, well, I'm going to go to my own city now and fight crime because Peter, you got the job here, yay! But I think that's their plan. They think, okay, Miles will be the young swinging single Peter in the main comic, and then Peter will be the older, mature, guy guiding him. And if they did that in a movie, it would be okay. But it would be like starting Star Wars, with the new movie coming out, Episode 7, and not having 1 through 6. Because you won't have Peter's development all the way up into there. It'll just be old man Peter with Miles. I don't get it.
It's a difficult concept to grasp, and I think getting back onto the topic of a Miles Morales film, I agree with you. A Miles Morales film in the future, under different circumstances, could work. I definitely believe that it could work, but as the first Spider-Man into the MCU, never should happen. It never should have happened, and luckily it isn't going to happen. In terms of Peter Parker being in high school, I don't remember. If I remember correctly, and I haven't gone back and rewatched the episode since we did it, but I remember not being too fond of the idea because we have seen it before, and yes, we have seen it before. Honestly, I'm neutral towards it at this point. I do think it's been covered in a lot of other material, like the Ultimate Comics, the Spectacular cartoon. I'm not really going to say the Raimi film because he really wasn't in high school in the Raimi films. He was in high school for all of 2 minutes.
Yeah, that's if it was even that. He had field trip, that scene in the cafeteria when he fights Flash, graduation. That's it.
Amazing Spider-Man 1 with Andrew Garfield really did. It capitalized on the high school aspect a bit more, but it didn't. That wasn't the be-all and end-all of the character.
I don't really agree with him on that, where he goes, oh, both these Sony series never really dealt with him in high school, and it's like, okay, Spider-Man, the Raimi trilogy, yeah, I definitely 100% agree with you with that. If they never did the Amazing Spider-Man series, Web, and it was between the Raimi trilogy in 2007, the rights kind of dangled there, and then Marvel got the rights back or did this deal with Sony, and he said that, I'd be 100% agreeing with him. But Amazing Spider-Man 1, the whole movie, he was in high school. I mean, there's scenes where him and Flash are about to get into fights. There's, Lizard attacks him in the school. I mean, him in high school was a pretty big deal in that movie. It wasn't, the big drawing part of it, but Peter in high school never was the big drawing part of it. You read back in the Stan Lee issues, it was just Flash, Liz, nameless kids, and then, some guy walked by with a radio, and Peter goes, oh, Green Goblin broke out of jail. Time to be Spider-Man again. That was it.
I mean, And I think they incorporated the high school aspect into the first Amazing film very well because, again, it wasn't the be all and end all of it, but it was part of the film. And so I'm with you on that statement. Is Feige wrong when he says that they never deal with it very much? I felt they dealt with it just enough, to be honest. I would have liked to have seen something a bit different with these films, because he's pretty much confirmed that Spider-Man's going to be in high school for a while at least. At least that's what it sounds like. He seems to want to keep Spider-Man in high school for a good while.
We should have known this. The second Marvel gets the rights to the movies, that it's going to be, he has to be in high school. Even if we got to recast, I don't care. Every 3 years, he's a high school student. He's 15. But I don't think they're going to do that. I think you might have it being, yes, in Civil War and his own solo movie, he might be like a freshman. But once you go to a few years and you get to the sequel, he's going to have to be a senior, unless you're going to say that all these movies take place in the span of 1 year. The Marvel Cinematic Universe all takes place in like 6 months. You know what I mean?
Which is not true. So, yeah, they'll probably keep him in high school for at least 2 movies, I would say. At least 2. Probably. I would say.
I can see them doing something like his high school graduation is Avengers Infinity War Part 1, and that's how you begin it, is Peter and his graduation, and he gets called off by the Avengers to help him out on this mission or whatever. I can see them doing something like that.
It's possible. I was going to say he's probably going to be in high school for at least 2 of the solo Spider-Man films, but I mean it's hard to say, really. I mean, we're not Marvel. We can't really speak for them or anything. He also added a bit in the interviews. He talked about the costume. He talked about how the costume is not going to be what we've seen in the previous films, but it's going to be classic Spider-Man. The one thing that immediately comes to my mind with that is, okay, really the only thing that they haven't done in the previous films in terms of the classic costume is the web pits. So is that really what's going to be the major addition to it?
I think, especially if you're doing the teenage Peter, I think that they might do is that they'll make you like clearly it's homemade, like not go full off spandex like in those old '80s, comic book covers where they would be like live action shots. Nothing like that, thank God. But I think they'll have it where it looks like a teenager made this, and then you might have and they're gonna explain all the little inconsistencies. Oh, it's an homage to the Ditko art. You know how Ditko didn't have consistency with the webbings in the early issues and the web pits and all that stuff, and the spider being crooked or whatever. Oh, it's because it's homage to Ditko. I can see them doing something like that. But when I hear those words, it's like you had the complete polar opposite of what you would have done, what people wanted with a Spider-Man suit, with Amazing Spider-Man, and then you had the Raimi movies and Amazing Spider-Man 2, which is the classic kind of look. And so you got these 2 really polar opposites. So when you hear it's going to be different, but you're going to love it because it's classic Spider-Man, they have said this about every costume in every movie. Oh, it's classic Spider-Man.
I'm just like, what could you possibly do that we haven't seen already? I mean, if you ask me, what was wrong with the suit with Amazing Spider-Man 2? Really nothing. So I mean, honestly, if they were to just take that suit from that movie and bring it over to this one and not mention a thing, I would be fine with that, honestly.
But I think they wanted to be their own design. But they quickly said, we already designed it, so they didn't think too much. I think what they did was they might have took the Amazing Spider-Man 2 or a Raimi one as, the beginning, like the base mold of it. Like, okay, that's what we got. That's our, inspiration. Now, how can we tweak this to make it ours? And I think that's
what they probably did was they probably took the ASM2 suit, took the eyes off of it, and put the smaller eyes from the Raimi suit on it and said, okay, this is ours.
Yeah, but then it looks too much like Raimi's. Oh, put the web pits there.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we don't know. We can't speak for Marvel, but I really don't see how they could make it any. I mean, to be honest, I love Amazing Spider-Man 1, and I think that the suit in the first Amazing Spider-Man film works well enough when it's in motion on screen. But I would not want to see something like that again. So I'm really hoping for a more first Raimi film-esque look to the suit, where it is classic Spider-Man, obviously. That's
for people who don't know what a web pit is that we're talking about. Here's a shot of it from this comic that we're going to be reviewing. like right there. It's like a little like in the Ditko versions and Ramita Jr. It's big. I mean, it goes from like wrist to like hip, but most people when they do minor interpretation of it, it's just like a little thing that goes like right here to here.
And then there's the cover to Amazing Spider-Man #3 where Dr. Octopus has him up like this, and it's going like down to the floor.
Oh, where it's like a cape on him. It looks like if you didn't know better.
Exactly. Which there are alternate versions of Spider-Man who have web capes. I'm just going to say that right now. Spider-Man Unlimited cartoon immediately comes to mind.
No, I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I mean, no, but for like, if you're like a new because obviously it's issue 3. If you're some new kid that's picking up Marvel books for the first time, you know, and you see it, you'll think, wow, he has a web cape. Oh, it's just webbing coming out of his armpits. That's weird.
I've never really had, as a kid, when I would look at those comics, like reprints of those early comics, and I'd see the web pits, I always thought the web pits were stupid. Today, I still think the web pits are kind of stupid, and I kind of failed to see, honestly, how the web pits would work in a live-action film. Yeah. If you can make them work, all power to you. You know, if someone can make them work, all power to them. But I don't see how it would work.
It's something that even like the artists, like 9 times out of 10, if you got a Spider-Man artist, they're not drawing the web pits. But then every once in a while, you might get a Ramita Jr. who will draw them, or Steve McNiven. I can never pronounce this guy's name right. Steve McNiven. Is that how you pronounce it?
McNiven, I think.
McNiven. Yeah, I can never pronounce his name wrong. I'm always bad with names. But he would do like little versions. I think in Secret Wars, that's how like they made it so that you could tell the difference between the Skrull Peter and the real Peter. Is that the Skrull had web pits and Peter's making jokes. Well, I have more web pits since I was 15, so you're obviously the fake. And it's like, Peter, currently in the Amazing Spider-Man issue that just came out, you have them.
And also, if you remember back to Amazing Spider-Man, 225, you were talking about putting the web pits back in, so yeah.
No, I just always found that funny because I was right in the middle of New Ways to Die, that story arc, and he's like, oh, web pits, the most ugliest thing. Why didn't nobody tell me these were so stupid? And it's like, Ramita Jr. in the issue of Spider-Man that just came out that week has them in their glory, pretty much.
Yep, that's continuity for you. In fairness, that wasn't actually the same writer or whatever. At least I don't think it was.
It was Bendis. Bendis wrote Secret Invasion, and the amazing writer was Sloth.
There we go then. And that was neither a compliment nor an insult.
It just
so basically,
though. When you say who are the writers that did that, where it kind of, I don't want to say continuity error, but you know, but when you say who the 2 writers is, it's like one of them is Bendis, who doesn't give a crap about continuity, and not saying that's a good or bad thing, but doesn't give a shit about continuity unless it's Ultimate, pretty much. And then you got Dan Slott, who's like, hey, remember this issue from like 1970 where Peter teamed up with this random comic that only lasted 5 issues? Here's the monster.
In terms of other comments made by Kevin Feige, he also talked about Spider-Man's wit. He said that basically Spider-Man is a young teenage kid who runs around and doesn't shut up. So he emphasized that Spider-Man's wit is going to be a very major part of the film, and it's going to be an integral part of the character as it is in the comics. And he also talked about he also did comment on the previous 2 franchises and what he thinks they did right and wrong with Spider-Man. He talked about how he liked that they got the women of Spider-Man's world right. They got the overall feel of the character down right, but he did mention that they did miss some aspects of it. He said that part of that was because they couldn't take place in the MCU, and part of it was just because they didn't feel they needed to delve into that. So overall, Feige said he did like the previous 2 franchises, but he said he wants to. I think basically he wants to improve on them. He wants to take Spider-Man world into a place that the previous 2 series never did. So I think that with the Spider-Man banter thing, Spider-Man's banter always comes down to, at least in the live-action film, it always comes down to delivery. And in order to make it work, 1, the jokes have to be well written, and 2, the actor has to be able to convey them effectively. So that's the banter is going to be made or broken by the casting choice. That I think that's pretty much a definite. And really, I don't really have any comments to say about Feige's comments on the previous two franchises.
Well, again, if I can interrupt you for a second, John.
Yeah.
I agree that, like it's what I said earlier, about what I forgot what I said now, about how if he was talking about if he was talking about the Raimi trilogy, I would definitely agree with him. But the Amazing Spider-Man, he had the quipping going on.
Andrew Garfield was on fire.
I mean, I just think about that scene with, Rhino in that truck where he's all like, some call me Webhead, some call me the Amazing Spider-Man, but don't call me late for dinner. I mean, like, that's classic Spider-Man, no matter which way you look at it.
And think about the car thief scene from the first film.
Yeah. Which that was not really quipping, that was more just angst-ridden, brooding teenager, but it fit so well for what that movie was trying to do that he was still trying to catch his uncle's killer. So I'll forgive them for that one. But Amazing Spider-Man 2 is where I think he reached Peter Parker comic book quipping levels.
It was Andrew Garfield did a very good job with the banter in the two Amazing Spider-Man films. Tobey Maguire, I really don't think it was as much Tobey as it was just
the writing.
They didn't really want, yeah, because it was like I mean, trying to think back to some of the quips from the Raimi films. The one that always immediately comes to my head is in Spider-Man 2 when Dr. Octopus is robbing a bank, and he knocks Spider-Man off the wall, picks him up, and says, "You're getting on my nerves." And Spider-Man says, "I have a knack for that." That was pretty good. I mean, I think Tobey, when the lines were written well, he could do well with them. They just weren't written very often.
I think the problem with it is because Spider-Man, the Raimi trilogy, was the big hit comic book. It was the first. X-Men was big too, but the first super mega hit that every kid had the toy for, everybody wanted, was Spider-Man. Spider-Man 2. Even Spider-Man 3, it was kind of like the tail end of it, but that was still a big boom. It was still a big premiere. And
Spider-Man 3 made like $900 million.
Yeah, but I could see their whole point is that was still coming off like 5 years post Batman and Robin in '97, where every superhero movie was bad. And I can see how they were scared to death. We don't want to make jokes. We don't want to do quipping because, for God's sakes, we don't want to be compared to Batman and Robin because that will kill us. So Peter can have it every once in a while, maybe one or two scenes where you see the quipping, but the rest of the movie, he has to be serious because we don't want to be like those late 90s superhero movies where they were constantly making jokes and became parodies of themselves. Like, I could see that was their point of view, but by the time you got to Spider-Man 2 and definitely in Spider-Man 3, there should have been more quipping. There should have been more classic Spider-Man.
I definitely agree with. I mean, I honestly had never considered the whole fear of repeating Batman and Robin. As someone who has not seen Batman and Robin, first of all, I'm thankful because I hear that's not a good movie.
It's the worst movie of all time, in my opinion. I don't care what other movie you throw at me, The Room, Plan 9 from Outer Space. I don't care. You throw any other movie at me. The worst movie of all time is Batman and Robin, hands down.
The Last Airbender? Have you never seen The Last Airbender?
Have you not seen Batman and Robin?
No, I haven't.
I would take The Last Airbender any day than Batman and Robin.
Okay, I'm almost tempted to see Batman and Robin now because no film is worse than no film adaptation is worse than The Last Airbender. The Last Airbender is awful.
Okay, let me tell you this way. If you go into watching the movie thinking you're going to see a piece of shit that's not really good and your expectations are already as low as they low, get ready to be disappointed because it's going to be even lower. I'm
really tempted by this movie now. Does that make me a masochist? Probably.
Well, I got the movie on Blu-ray, so I'll give you my copy of it. It came with a complete Batman movie set. That's why I have it on Blu-ray. It was $10, and it came with 89 all the way up into there. And the other 3 Batman movies are what were worth it. That movie was worth nothing. That movie could be on free on a shelf, and I wouldn't pick it up if it was by itself.
Oh, that's depressing.
And I'm a Batman fan, so if I see a free Batman thing, I'm taking it. But that thing, no.
All right, well, segueing back into Spider-Man a bit, I will say, just speaking generally about all this Marvel Cinematic Spider-Man stuff, we aren't given a lot of information yet. Robert Downey Jr. did also speak a bit about Marvel's Cinematic Spider-Man. He said that apparently it would defy all expectations, and that he wants to see Peter Parker because he's like, I'll say Parker, I'm old school. Yeah, no, I wonder if he was trying to make a pun because he just turned 50. I don't know. But
I think what it was is they probably, when they told them, okay, Spider-Man, change of plans, it's a Sony deal, here's some Spider-Man comic books, and probably, obviously, you're going to give Robert Downey Jr. any Spider-Man storyline so he can understand that character when he goes into Civil War with him. You're giving him, well, Civil War. And there's that kind of mentor, teacher, Jedi apprentice, Padawan learner thing that goes on between the two of them in that miniseries, especially in the Amazing books. So I can see how he looks at it as, oh, I'm going to take Peter into my learning. I'm going to show him how old school does it. We're not going to talk about Civil War today, but I feel like we really should talk about Civil War on an upcoming podcast. The main Civil War, I didn't really care about it when I first read that, but the Amazing stuff was really good, and I got the trade of that way. I'm going to go through my long boxes, pulling it out constantly. But that is a good story, the GMS, Spider-Man side storyline. It's kind of like it fills in the gap in between Civil War, and it works well, I think. The art is not that good. Yeah.
The 7-part War at Home story is what you're referencing. Amazing Spider-Man 532 to 538, I believe.
Could you really get a sense of that, the thing between Peter and Norman? It's really Luke Skywalker. If Luke Skywalker was trained in the Force by Darth Vader, because Tony's kind of, depending on what side you looked at the Civil War, because always whose side were you on? If you looked at Tony's side as being the wrong side, it was Luke being tempted by the dark side, pretty much. It felt like to me.
I have not read. I have read all of Civil War, at least the Amazing book. I did try to read the main Civil War, the just Civil War title. I wasn't really interested enough to keep reading it, but I will say I have some opinions on the Amazing Spider-Man Civil War saga. So we really have to do that on an upcoming episode. Maybe you'll see that on the next episode. Probably not.
Yeah,
I'll probably forget.
If you're doing this next episode, I'm game, because like I said, I actually kind of like that storyline. Until you get to the end. Because the second spoiler, Aunt May's shot, and then it begins back in black, which is just, we're tying in Spider-Man 3. And then one more day, you got like 6 months of like the worst Spider-Man of all time ahead of you.
All right, but I will say, first of all, I like Robert Downey Jr. So I like that he does go with Peter Parker. And really, we haven't been given a lot of information on the Marvel Cinematic Spider-Man, but I do feel like they are going in a good direction for not only Spider-Man, but for Spider-Man in the setting of the Marvel Universe, at least the Marvel film universe. From what I've been getting, the direction they seem to be going in, seems to fit the tone of the universe fairly well. And I do like that they are playing up Spider-Man as he is the odd man out, because all these other superheroes are a bit older, and he's just the young kid who doesn't shut up. So I do kind of like that angle.
But if you read back Adventure team-ups with Spider-Man in like that Stanley wrote in the 60s, or when he would appear in other books, if you never read Amazing, Peter Parker is, in your opinion, the worst superhero. He's annoying. He doesn't shut up. He makes jokes. He gets in fights with the other heroes. He's the last superhero you want. If you read those Stanley issues where he did in other books with Peter.
Exactly. So I do think they are being faithful to the comics in that sense, which is usually a good thing, except when the comics suck. Then you don't want to be faithful. But those are generally good comics. So I do like that they are being faithful in that sense. But the other big piece of news that we've gotten in the last 2 months is that we got some details on Amazing Spider-Man Renew Your Vows. For anyone who has not been up to date with Spider-Man news, obviously that is a new tie-in title to Secret Wars coming out starting in June. The first issue launches on, I think, June 3rd, actually. Basically, details, just running down a list of details we have here. First of all, it has been confirmed that it will be written by Dan Slott with art by Adam Kubert. I can't actually show you the preview art that we got right now, but the preview art by Adam Kubert is looking fairly decent. We didn't see too much about it, but it's looking pretty okay. It's being solicited, because I can say that word, as the quote-unquote last Spider-Man story ever. So we'll see how that goes.
It's not. It's just going to be the last 616 Spider-Man story ever.
Yeah, and then we're going to start, new Secret Wars Battle World, quote-unquote, reboot, Spider-Man being started here. And then we also have a few details on it. First of all, Eddie Brock is teased to be returning as Venom. Just going to say it right now. I'm on board for that. Peter Parker and Mary Jane will be married with their child, with a daughter. All on board for that. And let's see, what else am I missing
for money?
here? What was that?
They're hurting for money. Because that was another big thing about it, is that because the way Dan Slott and everybody was talking about, and they're going to be hurting for money because when you're married, you got to split the bills. So there's going to be a lot of money problems. Even though she in the old continuity owned a nightclub and he owned a science lab, but they're hurting for money.
Even though she probably made a good chunk of money as a freaking model and an actress or whatever.
It sounds like
Because wasn't the whole thing in the Mackie Byrne era that she bought that apartment with her money?
Yes.
I haven't read those old issues in a while, but I'm pretty sure that was the whole point. So, apparently this Renew Your Vows, Mary Jane, apparently has no money. The one way maybe it's like maybe this Renew Your Vows, Mary Jane is actually Kirsten Dunst, and she's a singing waitress at a jazz club.
Well, the way I'm looking at it is Renew Your Vows is an interesting twist. It's not just Peter and Mary Jane stay married or they got back together or the marriage got undone, the deal with Mephisto got undone. I think it's going to be a what-if kind of scenario where they didn't take the deal. They told Mephisto what they should have said in that issue, in my opinion. Screw you. We'll find another way out of this. Then the one moment in time thing where they went to go find Doctor Strange, all that stuff still happened. And then what you got now is Spider-Man now between One More Day and now, where Brand New Day didn't happen, Big Time didn't happen, maybe Superior still happened, but maybe Mary Jane knew the truth and thought Peter was dead, so she and the kid left town and they couldn't stand that Otto was screwing Peter's legacy or whatever. Like, maybe you got like little twists and turns there, but it's taking place as, One More Day, Brand New Day, Big Time, all that stuff didn't happen. Like, pretty much the reversal of what they said about the marriage era. Yeah, all that stuff still happened, but it happened differently now. Now they're married. Carly was just a friend or a girl who Peter might have been close to coming an affair with, or I could see them doing something like that.
And to be honest, using Renew Your Vows as kind of like the alternate ending to the alternate future to an alternate One More Day, I'm okay with that, honestly. The best part about this that I liked was I really did like the quote from Dan Slott that he did say Spider-Man, when you get down to it, is about responsibility. I really liked that because what a lot of people say that Marvel is just obsessed with Spider-Man being about youth. This kind of went contradictory to that, and when I read that quote from Slott, it made me smile a bit.
Because it's the marriage. I mean, the marriage era, the big thing the fans have said is it was all about him gaining more responsibility. And I think that's what the direct quote is, that Peter's about responsibility. So it's telling the fans, oh shit, this is happening, where the marriage is coming back. Now, I still am fully expecting Marvel to do a fooled you by either A, having this being the last 616 storyline, and then post-Battle World, he's 16 again in high school. But they could be serious about this. I mean, all the stuff you've been hearing about them still saying take your medicine and eat it about One More Day, that could just all be a ploy to get you all mad to the point that you're rooting for the return of the marriage in the storyline for all we know. This could have been a master plan since 2008 and the biggest fuck you April Fool's joke Marvel has ever pulled on everybody by revealing that, yeah, we knew you were going to hate the story One More Day and Brand New Day, and we planned this all because we knew this big reboot was coming or something like that.
Well, first of all, I'm not even going to touch that, but also it's just like I do like that I did like that quote from Dan Slott. I do really love the idea of renew your vows. I love the idea of Peter being married with a kid. I just love the premise of this story, and I will say Eddie Brock coming back as Venom sold, because that's been something that's been overdue since about was it 2005 when he got rid of the symbiote and Matt Gargan became Venom in Marvel Knights?
I think it was 2004. Because 2005 was
2004, 2000.
Because 2004 is when that series became when Marvel Knights became sensational. Was 2005, and then 2006 was the other, and then 2006 was Civil War. 2005 was the other for Spider-Man. So 2004 would have to be when Marvel Knights took place.
Yeah, so Eddie Brock hasn't been Venom for what, 10 years? That would be a welcome return in my opinion. I love Eddie Brock as Venom. Matt Gargan's Venom.
Not since Spider-Man 3. That's the last time you saw any version of Eddie Brock as Spider-Man. as Venom. Is Spider-Man 3.
Well, the Spectacular cartoon.
Oh yeah, I forgot all about that. Yes, Spectacular.
Matt Gargan's Venom is so forgettable that I don't remember a damn thing he did besides I think he fought Spider-Man in New Ways to Die.
But not as Venom. He wasn't Venom. He was anti-Venom. Gargan was the Venom in that story arc.
Yeah, Gargan was Venom. Brock was anti-Venom. So Gargan's Venom is so forgettable. And Flash Thompson's Venom, I've never really been... it's not that I don't like him. I just never really been as interested in him, so...
And it kind of got ruined, too, because then you had Venom, which is the Dark Spider-Man. Then you had Scarlet Spider because of Kane being the Dark Spider-Man. And then you had Superior, who was the Dark Spider-Man.
Sorry, I'm just shifting positions here. It is a very... Venom is a character that has gone through so many changes over the past decade. A nice return, a back to basics with him would be a good thing, I think. And I would be very excited to see Eddie Brock become Venom again. And I'm thinking about some of the other things with Renew Your Vows, and to be honest, I'm just excited for it. I really am. It has been confirmed to be shipping at least 2 issues in June, so probably 2 issues a month. Probably because Dan Slott is not working on the other decimal issues that Gary Conway is currently working on, which I'm surprised are actually being continued into the Secret Wars era. I'm surprised they didn't just cut him off. I'm surprised they didn't plan that as a 3-part story instead of a 5-part story like they are. But I mean, whatever. Marvel can do whatever the heck they want.
Yeah.
So I mean, I'm just excited for Renew Your Vows, even if it doesn't last and we get a rebooted 16-year-old Peter Parker in high school, which I kind of don't want to turn this discussion into do we think that would be a good idea, but I'm going to do it anyway. Do we think that would be a good idea?
I can see it happening, and I wouldn't be upset by it. Like I said, this has been my prediction since they announced Renew Your Vows as one of the things in Secret Wars, and that has been my thing. Is this is the end of 616, Peter? We're giving in finally. You guys wanted it. Here's your happy ending. Peter can grow old now in this universe. He got his happy ending. He got his kid. He got the love of his life. He got to be mature. You got it. Now forgive us, and here's the new 16-year-old Peter for the new continuity.
See, it's like, and that's kind of the approach I take with it as well, is like, if Renew Your Vows is quote-unquote the last 616 Spider-Man story, and it's kind of like the bookend to everything, Peter Parker does get his happy ending, and then we reboot and go into the new universe with a 16-year-old Peter Parker in high school dealing with modern teenage issues, I wouldn't be opposed to that, honestly. I'd kind of be okay with it. I mean, at that point, I would prefer, and this is nothing against Dan Slott or any of the current editorial regime, but I think that a reboot under a new creative regime would be a good thing. It would really be a fresh start. That's not an insult to Dan Slott or any of the editorial regime. It would just be, in my opinion, the logical thing to do. I'd say let Slott finish that out and then take a step back, bring in a new team, and that's when we do the reboot. That's what I would do, personally. And I don't mind the idea of a reboot, honestly. I mean, it's not something that bothers me. I mean, if it's poorly written and poorly done, then I'll mind it, but...
Which, it's Slott, so there's a chance, because the way he's been talking, I mean, a lot of people are saying he's just trolling online, but the way he's been talking about the marriage, and Birdman's been about take your medicine and eat it too about the marriage, and about his recent comments about the real Mary Jane, there could be a big way that this could end up being, we're showing you, it could be either the happy ending that I'm really hoping it is, or it can be Venom kills them, their life sucks, they have no money because they're bored married people, don't you hate marriage, yeah, here's the new teenage Peter Parker. Or it could be, here's your happy ending, here's Peter, he got the love of his life, he's got the kid, he got to die a happy man when his universe ended. There you go. Now here's our new Spider-Man. Or it could be Mary Jane's dead, the kid's dead, Venom ate them, Venom did this, they have no money, Peter sucks, he's an old poor man now, ha ha ha. Here's our new 16-year-old Spider-Man, and now we're going to do it right with no marriage and a continuity at all. I mean, I could see them completely doing that too.
That would be awful. I mean,
like, I could see that, and like, there's a little bit in my back of my head, I think they can do the 180 where it's the bad ending where Venom fucks everything up for his happy ending, and it's like, don't you hate marriage? Or it can be where I really hope, which is the happy ending. He beats Venom, which you can say was his big villain or for whatever, and then he got it done, he's got the kid, he's got the girl, happy ever after. I really hope it's that one.
I want a happy ending for this 616 Peter, I really do. And if they give me that happy ending with Renew Your Vows, and then we lead into a reboot of 16-year-old Peter Parker in high school, I'm okay with that. As long as it's a happy ending, I'm okay. But I mean, to be honest, I don't want Renew Your Vows to be a sad, depressing thing. I really don't. And I mean, I'm not really getting my hopes up. Maybe I'm just being too optimistic, but I mean, I'm trying to look at the best of the situation. We don't know what Marvel's going to pull out with this, so we really do just have to wait and see. I mean, because we can't really maybe we can go by what history has told us with one more day, with one moment in time, but
just the way Marvel has acted about the story. I mean, to the point that they were rigging contests and what's our worst comic of all time? People vote for One More Day. No, you don't appreciate One More Day. It's your second choice. There, that's the one that wins. Like, I remember when they did that. Like, that was completely like, no, this story sucks. You're saying that it doesn't count because we don't appreciate it yet?
It was. Well, I'm really of the opinion that we'll just have to wait and see. I really am. I'm not going to go one way or the other with that. I'm not going to have I don't want to say biased, but I'm not going to have a preconceived opinion going in.
I'm cautiously optimistic. I think it's going to be the happy ending, or the beginning of the new married Peter Parker and the new continuity, or it's the happy ending and then the teenage Peter Parker coming months later in the new continuity. I'm really optimistic of that, but if Marvel does do a fooled you last minute with the storyline being just to prove why marriage sucks or whatever, like they could be doing, then I'm not going to like it. But for right now, I'm cautiously optimistic.
All right, so that's pretty much going to do it for all of the news topics this week. There really hasn't been a lot of other news besides that. So what we are going to do is we are going to take a look at a fun, well, okay, quote-unquote fun. We are going to take a look at a little bit of a blast from the past a bit. We're going to go back to January of 2008, and we're going to take a look at the first arc of Amazing Spider-Man Brand New Day. And James is holding up to the camera there the cover to Amazing Spider-Man 546. I believe that's a Steve McNiven cover.
Yep.
Yeah, Steve McNiven cover. And let me just say, I will say this right now, an immediate pro for Brand New Day. That cover to Amazing Spider-Man 546 is one of my favorite Spider-Man covers of all time.
I mean, I just love it because it's symbolic in so many ways. It says Spider-Man returns, and it can be symbolized as the return of how Marvel thinks Spider-Man should have been. You got him putting back on the mask as a symbolizing that the Civil War on-mask era is over. You got the camera signaling that he's working for the Bugle again. You got Joan on the poster saying we hate Spider-Man, so it's that classic feel. So this cover really, if you want to sum up what Marvel wanted Brand New Day to be at the beginning, at the core, this is the cover. This is it.
I love that cover. I think it's absolutely gorgeous. I just, as much, whatever feelings I may have about the issue as we go in, I think that cover is absolutely fantastic. But a basic breakdown of the issue, basically there's a guy in a Spider-Man mask who's basically been running around kind of robbing people, mugging people. He's later named in the story as the Spider Mugger. Meanwhile, Peter Parker is having kind of a bit of a rough time. He's back home living with Aunt May again. Aunt May is pressuring him to get up, go out, and get a job. Because that's Aunt May for you. She's always the condescending, pushy aunt. That's always what she's been since 1962. But basically, we got Aunt May going out, pushing him to do that. He goes, buys a copy of the Daily Bugle, and it's revealed that the Daily Bugle, since Spider-Man's been away, because it actually is revealed in this issue that Spider-Man's been away now for a few months. He's been kind of absent ever since the whole Civil War thing basically ended.
Yeah, that's what they're hinting at, but one moment in time makes it out like it's weeks later that the storyline happens, because where One More Day ends is the aftermath of One Moment at a Time, pretty much at that final scene. So it's like, well, how many months in advance does the story take place? Because the continuity does get kind of screwed up when you think about that. Because this is months later, is this right as Secret Invasion's about to happen, or is this like this Spider-Man quit was only like a month? Like only 1 month of the Bugle papers went down.
Yeah, that shows what people really think about the Bugle in terms of quality or whatever. But so the Daily Bugle's suffering because they don't have any pictures of Spider-Man to publish. Peter Parker goes looking for a job. He tries to get a teaching job, tries to get a photography job, and he tries to get a science job, all of which he is turned down for. And it is kind of notable that at least 2 out of these 3 jobs are because of his past records with Spider-Man. The teaching job he was turned down for because at his old teaching job in the JMS era, he never showed up for work. And the science job, he was so busy being Spider-Man, he never pursued science. So that was kind of an interesting little note there. So Peter's kind of sitting, brooding about how he, it was supposed to be this brand new day, but it's just like old times. And we do get, and yes, before that, there is that wonderful splash page of Peter with all his villains behind him. I really like that splash page too.
Which, can I add something? Because as a fan who was reading this book the day it came out, and being in my comic book store with other people the day it came out, and being on CBR and other boards and other Spider-Man fan sites, the day this issue came out, there were so many people who read too much into this. Because Venom's not in here, so did they retcon Venom? It was like, because nobody knew what this new continuity was going to be. So because Venom wasn't in this big villain splash in the back, he must have been retconned.
To be honest, where was I in January? In January 2008, I was in the 5th grade, and I was now reading comics back then. So I'm really glad I was not there for that moment in the fandom. But
I was in my junior year of high school. God, I feel old now hearing your story about how you were in the 5th grade.
Dude, I'm a month away from graduating high school. I'm gonna be up there. I'm gonna be closer to you soon enough. And by closer, I mean not closer at all, because graduating high school does not technically, in the grand scheme of things, make me closer to you, because we are always going to be the exact same distance apart based on the time stream. Okay, I'm going to shut up now. basically, Peter is invited to go out clubbing with Harry Osborn, who was recently resurrected by. Well, basically, it was not actually an after effect of One More Day. They're just like, oh, hey, Harry's back because he never actually got off in the first place.
Which I gotta say makes sense because I have said this for years, even before this story, that if you're going to bring Harry back to life, and when I mean years, I was only reading the comics for about 2 or 3 years before this, but I always thought if you're going to bring back Harry, he had the Goblin formula in him. I mean, if Norman can come back, so can Harry.
I mean, maybe we'll talk about that story someday as well, but it's. Man, I haven't read that. I don't even remember the last time I read that story, but
The Resurrection?
Yeah, it was the Amazing Spider-Man 581, I think, is the issue we're referencing.
That's a good one. I like that two-parter. Except for the whole, because the mind block, Harry can't connect dots. So it's, Spider-Man, what are you doing here? I know, Peter. And it's like, oh god, Harry knows the secret again. And then it's like, Peter must have called you. Yes, that's it. Peter called me.
Yes, the freaking psychic mind block. So Peter goes out clubbing with Harry, Lily Hollister, Harry's girlfriend, and Carly Cooper, and that is where the comic kind of comes, quote unquote, full circle, because we finally find out who the chick is that Peter's macking on the front page. Oh man, I just read the issue about 2 hours ago, and I'm already blanking on not even.
I'm sorry, it's just hearing you say macking. I just remember when I was reading this and I was downloading the crawl space, so I cheap plugged them for a second. But when I was reading when I was watching the crawl space, and then J.R. Fettinger they had to call, what's this macking thing I'm hearing about? Mac, mac, mac. He sounds like a duck. It was almost because as a teenager at the time, I know what macking is. So here's this guy in his middle age, like, mac, mac, mac. He sounds like a duck. It was like the most funniest thing. I had to pause that podcast. I had to laugh for about an hour straight because that was like the most funniest thing I ever heard.
All right, so I'll change the phrase here. The chick that Peter's trying to suck the teeth out of, I've already blanked on what her name is, but she proves to be kind of she acts like she's a stalker, but she actually just wants to screw Peter so that she can get into the Osborn entourage, and that if Lily Hollister and Harry ever break up, she can start screwing Harry. So Peter goes outside for some air, runs into Carly. And they have a kind of a moment, I guess, maybe a foreshadowing moment that's only going to come to fruition about 100 issues later when they finally start dating. But
it's a few years later when they start dating.
Yeah, it's like 100 issues in issue order, and so they get attacked by the Spider Mugger. The Spider Mugger takes their wallets, their credit cards, and everything. He also steals one of Peter's web shooters. So Peter's like, okay, Carly, you stay here. I'm going after him. Peter, what are you doing? Oh, I'm just going to take his picture. Okay, whatever. So he goes after him. He goes to change into Spider-Man, then realizes, you know what? Why would I do this? If I don't go as Spider-Man, then J. Jonah Jameson will go out of business. So I'll just do this as plain old Peter Parker, and for once, I'll be the hero. So he chases him across a couple of blocks. They end up in the Feast home shelter, which coincidentally, dun dun dun, is where Aunt May is volunteering her time. So the thief gets away, and Peter says, "Oh man, I really need some money." Goes up to the Daily Bugle, where J. Jonah Jameson is literally seconds away from being bought out, and he is trying his hardest to keep the Bugle in his ownership. He has stopped everyone's paychecks, and the whole staff is working as a show of solidarity. I believe they refer to it as in the issue. They're still working as a sign of support for Jonah, a sign of they love the Bugle, they love working for the man they do. Yeah, whatever. And they will stand by Jameson no matter what. And so Peter Parker, the man you think would be all for this, charges into Jonah's office and says, "Jonah, hand me my money, you old grouch. After all I've done for you, I'm gonna go out of character here and start screaming at you." And Jameson's like, "I can't deal with this BS dialogue," and has a heart attack. And so Peter decides to go, "It's all my fault," and the issue ends. Yeah, because it actually is this time. Well, okay, it's not.
As somebody who read the Brand New Day era from beginning to end, and we know what ends up happening with the DB with Dexter Bennett. Dexter Bennett's a piece of shit. Die. And
Yeah,
think about it.
Dexter Bennett is not a likable guy.
Yeah, he fired people from the Bugle left and right for not doing what he told them to do, and it might sound like, oh, well, he's the boss. I mean, he wanted them to do things like break into people's homes so that way he can get photos of celebrities having sex with their girlfriends. I mean, that's really far what he wanted.
Are you referring to the paper doll arc there?
Yeah, the paper doll arc, and then you got his like evil line where he's mystery man in the phone with somebody. I don't think they ever got to resolve who it was. But he's all like, the Bugle staff doesn't know what I'm really bought this paper for. Oh, and I fired everybody from Betty to he fired Betty, he fired Peter. Ben York was already gone and started Frontline by this time, and he fired Joe. So pretty much.
Did he fire Robbie, or did Robbie leave on his own? I can't remember.
Well, Rob, I think it was like a "screw you, you can't fire me, I quit" like thing, if I recall right.
All right, so I think we'll go through some basic thoughts on this individual issue. I think I'll start off by saying that this issue suffers definitely by being the first issue of its era and the first issue that really has to establish the tone and the overall status quo of this new era. And I think that is part of where this issue falters a bit. But also there is just some really negative stuff in here that does bring it down for me. Do I think it's a bad issue? Kinda, not really. Maybe in some parts. It's a bit of a cluster for me. I think that the cover is the best part of it, but there are good aspects to the issue, but it's really got problems. James, what are your overall thoughts on Amazing 546?
Well, to do this, remember, this is the guy who hated Superior, doesn't like the current run, and if I see something that's kind of bullshit from Dan Slott, I'll call him out on it. And go back to James, January 2008. I read this issue, I thought, this is the greatest guy ever, the right Spider-Man. He gets the character. Oh my god. Because in my opinion, this is a really good issue. If you're starting off as, this is the new version of the Romita era, the Golden Age is back, this is classic Spider-Man, this issue kind of feels like it. Now, you got the problems that years later, me reading it, I noticed, like, Peter can't just go to the library and use their computer to find a job. Like, what's going on there? About the whole, I can't get a computer job, I don't own a computer. If I did, I'll be doing Monster to get a job. Peter, go to the library. I mean, you got problems like that. And you got the whole, Peter's, got his web shooter stolen and also his credit card. And at that exact moment, Harry just so happened to say, Peter, nobody would give Peter Parker a credit card. Oh, his credit card got stolen. And and then you got the Harry stuff, which is clearly like, oh, we got to make him like James Franco. The Harry who died would have never done this shit he's doing here.
It does tie in a bit to one of my big problems with this issue is the characterizations. Aunt May, and it kind of ties into what we were talking about last week with Amazing Volume 3, number 17, with condescending Aunt May. Here she is again in this issue. So it's clearly not a recent problem. As far back as January 2008, Slott was doing this. It's a big problem with me because Aunt May is just not that... Aunt May has never really had that tone to her. So it's a big issue with me in terms of that. And also, am I the only person who thinks that Peter's just kind of a jerk in this issue? I mean...
The way I felt about your Aunt May comment, when I read this in 2008, I was okay with it. Because the way I looked at it as the Aunt May who was the doting aunt to the single Peter when he was in college and high school made sense because he was still a minor, he was still a teenager, or he was just in college, so he was still relatively a young man where, yeah, you can come live with me again, or she didn't see his faults. Or 25-year-old doesn't want to get off your couch and get a job. Well, she probably saw Peter because he was to go and get a job. He was swinging around as Spider-Man. I can see how she'll be like, okay, get enough off my couch, you bum, go find a job now. But the thing I have a problem with that now is that he has a good job. He has a girlfriend. He has all that stuff, and you're still giving him shit like, oh, typical Peter, he can't find a girlfriend.
I do see what you're saying there, and when I look at it from that perspective, it does improve my opinion a bit, but I don't know. I don't like the flat-out condescension. Peter just kind of seems like a jerk in this issue, and that kind of leads me more towards the end of the story, which I don't really want to get to immediately. I want to touch on some other things in there first.
If I can finish my points I was making, or are you?
Oh yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, I liked it. I kind of felt like it was kind of like a shot at the JMS era. The whole you never gave an explanation for why you were gone and you got fired from this job, and it's like, okay, we get it. You don't think you should have been teaching high school, but that's what it only felt like. Was like, well, we got to justify why he's working again at the Bugle now. Okay, because he could technically get a job working at a laboratory because he already had that in '99, and he already had that kind of with, can just use Tony Stark as a reference because he helped him out with the Avengers and stuff like that. Now, we'll just say that he's not liable for it. He wasn't. How do we explain why he didn't go back to teaching? Well, I got it because he's the worst teacher of all time. But when you reread those JMS issues, yeah, did he miss stuff? Did the teacher cut class to be Spider-Man? But when you do see him as a teacher, he was a damn good teacher in those comics. He was always there for his students to help them with their problems, whether it be a math problem or a supervillain wanting to kidnap them. I mean, he was always kind of there for them.
I've actually been going in my free time recently. I've read a few JMS stories, and one that immediately comes to my mind when I think of the high school teaching job, because I will say right off the bat, I think the high school teacher for Peter Parker was the best career option we have ever seen for Peter Parker. It works so well for him as a person. I do realize the conflict that brings up with the whole Spider-Man thing, but when you do see him as a teacher, it's fantastic. And the story that immediately comes to my mind is Amazing Spider-Man Volume 2, number 55 and 50. I think it's 55 and 56, where he helps the student out whose brother he actually helped arrest a few years prior, and he kind of thinks about what happens to who are these guys that I'm helping to bring in? What happens to them when I arrest them? Are their families screwed and all of that? And he just helps this girl who's one of his students, and it's a fantastic story.
It is. I think it's the first Morlan story. I think when he gets to teaching.
No, not the first Morlan story. It's way past that. It's closer to 500 actually.
Oh yeah, it's the one right before 500.
I love that story.
Because that was the build up to 500. Yeah, I remember.
It's a fantastic story, and it is a bit disappointing to see him lose that teaching job. Though here is a pro I did kind of like for the issue. It isn't established that he loses his job because he's just a loser, which is what the Brand New Day era is notorious for trying to push, that Peter Parker's just a loser on his own. He loses his job because of his dual life as Spider-Man. That is an aspect of it that I do think fits with the character, and I did like quite a bit.
Yeah, I agree with you 100% on that. And my other thing about the high school, Days of teacher, I loved it because it was pretty much JMS and the other writers of the satellite titles at the time way of saying, okay, Marvel wants us to do teenage high school Peter, we'll give them that, but he's an adult. He's the teacher. So all the teen drama that you can do in the stories, we'll give it to a student. Okay, we'll put Flash in as the gym teacher, and he's kind of like, Revenge of the Nerds kind of like thing. He regrets a little bit back to being like puny Parker, but he does it more as a joking way to his friend. But you still got those elements of the high school days, only now Peter's the teacher, Flash is the gym coach, and then you got the students going for the teen drama where Peter helps them. I thought that was their way of doing it. but Marvel was still like not good enough. We need him to be young and sweet, and single. Like that's the way I always felt about it. Well, that was their way of putting him back in high school without having him be 16 again.
I really did enjoy the teaching job, and getting back to the 546 thing. Something else I didn't like about this, as much as I really did like the cover and I liked the splash page with Peter with all of his villains behind him, I didn't really like the art. I felt that the style was just, it wasn't fitting with the story exactly, and to me it just looked really, I don't like to use the word dirty because I know that can be a confusing term when you're talking about art on a page, but it just looked grimy and dirty and just it didn't look good in my opinion.
I don't. Maybe it's your digital copy you read this off of, but I love the artwork on this. But the original, I just love it. I like the approach of it because everything almost feels classic with the white border around the bubbles and it just, and then the sun. It just feels like you're reading classic Spider-Man when you see this art. In my opinion, it feels like it fits. For some reason, when you're trying to figure that sunny, brand new day. You know, the start of the new continuity, here's your jumping on point, the new Spider-Man. I felt like this artwork really fit. And there's a lot of bad artwork as we go on. If we go do more Brandy Day issues as we go on with these classic every once in a while, there's some issues with some really god-awful art. But I will defend the art here because I thought this art was amazing, in my opinion. No pun intended.
And the last major thing I didn't like about this issue, wow, was that out of character for Peter Parker at the end. That, I really didn't like that.
I see their point is because they had to have Peter give him the heart attack. But if they would have played it off as he didn't know, like he just came in there, he just screamed at Jonah, and then Jonah had the heart attack, and then Betty turned to him and go, Peter, he's just about to lose the company. We're not even getting paid. That's why it happened. And then he felt bad for it. That's classic Spider-Man. I'll give you that. That's great. But the whole fact that Betty's telling him, and he's like, fuck that, I don't care. This place can go out of business. Give me my money. Yeah, that was not Peter Parker.
I did not like that at all.
Like I said, just take it. Just have it to be he didn't know. He just ran in there, barged in there, screaming and yelling, Jonah had a heart attack, and then Joe or Betty had to tell him, hey, Peter, we're not even getting paid. He's losing the bugle. It's being bought out. Shit. Like, that would have been great. I would have at least accepted that.
The other the one last note I have about this issue, it's more of a positive aspect than anything else. I did kind of like the little introductory scene with Mr. Negative. Mr. Negative has never really been one of my favorite villains. I've never been too intrigued by him or anything. I've always actually been kind of neutral towards him. But I did think his little introductory scene in there was actually kind of cool. I did enjoy him.
I like him too, and he's really, like, you'll notice there's a lot in the Brand New Day era. You can, like, I brought this up before in the podcast, there is, like, once a writer latches onto a character, they won't let go, so you'll go months without that character showing up because other writers want to use their characters, or they won't be allowed to use this character, and it would really be weird how months later story arcs will be brought back up again once that writer came back. And Negative feels like that. When Negative's in a storyline that's written by Dan Slott, I feel like he's written really good. He's a really menacing villain. He's really, hard, and, he's freaky. I mean, it's like out of the Daredevil show or Punisher. He's murdering people left and right with swords and stuff like that for the mob, pretty much. And he's written perfectly here, but then you get him with other writers in the Brand New Day area that he kind of gets watered down, I feel like.
Yeah, I think Mr. Negative, when done right, is a really cool idea, and I think he's a pretty decent character when Dan Slott is writing him as he is here. But overall, James, I think we're going to go thumbs up, thumbs sideways, or thumbs down on this issue.
Thumbs up, because like I said, this was the beginning, and reading this issue again, I can see why I felt this way in 2008. Where I'm mad that the marriage is gone. I would rather him be married, but this is still a pretty damn good story. And I was all pro Dan Slott, and now you see me now. So you're going to see the rise and fall in this episode with me, pretty much. But yeah, but if I can go on to a few more of my points just real quickly before we go away, why I feel this way. Like, I felt like that everything here started off great, and in a sad way, almost everything here, it starts off great, but then it's either slowly or right away because of different writers or Dan Slott or, editorial or whatnot. It immediately starts off at this really high point, and then everything, in my opinion, just by the time you get to the end of Brandon Day, or even now with the current books, it went doom, nosedive at some point. And I really just like this. I mean, it feels really good. It feels fresh. It feels new like they wanted, new and exciting. It sets up a really good story. I felt like I liked Negative. And this is coming from somebody who hated Carly. At the end of this issue, I thought, oh, she's cute. I hope one day after they give us enough time to grieve the end of Peter and Mary Jane, maybe these two can get together. Because here it's actually written confident. And those few little short scenes they have together, Carly and Peter is written as nicely as you can do it 3 weeks after the marriage ending, pretty much. Because it is played off as, well, Carly, because she's kind of, in the shadow of the other chick, I forgot her name right now, Lily, right?
Lily Hollister.
And then Peter goes, well, Carly, I think you're kind of cute. Like, little things like that where they're in that alley together, where you get, like, the little, oh, that's sweet. And I felt like, yeah, that's just really sweet. I'm still pissed off he should be with Mary Jane. But I at least like this girl. I can see her being the new girlfriend of this new continuity. And then, boy, was I wrong about a year later when they started shoving her down your throat. And it literally took me from somebody who actually wanted them to get together to being like, I want her dead.
Oh, jeez.
Throw her off a bridge.
In terms of me with this individual issue, I'm going to give it... I'm going to have to go thumbs down. I did not like 546 as an individual issue. I'm going to have to go thumbs down on it. But as we move here into Amazing Spider-Man number 547, basic summary of the issue. Jonah goes to the hospital where, as they are, and yes, that is the cover there that James is also showing. Is that another Steve McNiven cover? I believe it is.
They all are. I know how you know, because this is like literally months after Civil War. So his signature on all of these is Team Civil War.
Ah, okay. While Jonah's in the hospital, Marla Jameson, who is obviously Jameson's wife, who we first met back in, I think, Len Wein's run back in the 70s. But Marla Jameson sells their remaining shares of the Bugle to Dexter Bennett because she says, Jonah, I always knew that this is where we would end up. This would happen because you would obsess about the Bugle or Spider-Man or something. And that's why I'm doing this. And so she sells the Bugle basically to Dexter Bennett. Meanwhile, Bruno Carnelli, I believe his name is, he's kind of he is in line to become the head of the next the head of the Magia and the Carnelli mobs. I believe I'm getting those names right. I'm going to be really embarrassed if I'm not. But he's the heir apparent to this big mob underworld group. And so basically Mr. Negative wants to take them all out. And so he manages to kidnap Bruno Carnelli and uses his blood and also the formula from a little a tablet of death, basically, that he bought off of somebody in the previous issue. He uses that to conduct a special gas that will kill anyone within the Carnelli Magia little gang thingy there. And so Spider-Man basically attempts to stop Mr. Negative, attempts to fight and rescue Carnelli. He does manage to do that, but he gets wind of Mr. Negative's plot to take out the massive mob group as they're all meeting together. So Spider-Man goes to the I believe it's the Vandermeer Hotel, which they're situated at. He busts in there. They all fire on him, but Mr. Negative releases the gas, and they all fall to the floor, seemingly off, and that's where the issue ends. This issue, for me, overall thoughts, a much stronger issue, I think. I'm actually going to be a lot more positive to this issue, probably because it was a more Spider-Man-focused issue, so there wasn't as much of the Peter Parker loser stuff that we had to deal with in the previous issue. But immediate positives right now, this issue made me love Mr. Negative, at least for this story. I really love this dark, ominous sort of monotonal vibe that they give him, especially with the dialogue. When I read Mr. Negative's dialogue, it just sounds just so when I hear it in my head, it just sounds so emotionless, and I just love that about him. I felt that the action in this issue was a lot better, and I felt that the art was a lot better, and I felt that this was overall just such a much stronger second part to this overall story. Once again, Dan Slott as the writer, Steve McNiven on pencils, so the same creative team, and overall a much better product. Probably because they weren't hampered as much by the first issue stigma. So, James, I want to get your overall thoughts on the second issue, Amazing 547.
Again, I liked it. I thought this was really good. I felt like where the first issue, there's like, other than the cover, there's no Spider-Man shot, and it's all Peter Parker. So I felt like issue 1 of the new era, which was 546, right? Yeah. 546 was, it's the beginning, and you get to really get a sense of this is the Peter Parker of the new continuity, of the new brand new day continuity. And then here's the Spider-Man. Here's the classic quipping. Here's the jokes. Here's him saying, "Hey, I'm a door-to-door vacuum cleaner salesman," when he's bumping into Negative out of the skylight. I mean, it's classic Spider-Man, and I love how they got like the kind of like the kissing effect where you have him and the girl making out at the club, and here it's him giving Jonah CPR. And then there's a nice Easter egg in the background. I don't know if you noticed this, but in the background, those shots, those bugle covers, are from the Raimi trilogy.
Oh man, I'm gonna have to go back and look at that after. I did not even notice that, to be honest.
Like right here while I'm talking, so that way it's full screen. Look at. Oh, here if I can get it. Spider-Man 2, Doc Ock.
Yeah, there we go.
And somewhere up here is a Spider-Man 3 one too. I mean a Spider-Man 1. I think 3 was just making its rounds, so they probably didn't get the rights from Sony for whatever reason. But yeah, I like that. Like I said, I love Negative here. He's a great villain. I love the whole part of Peter thinks, "Oh, I just break the tablet. It's done with." And he goes, "Dude, I wrote it down. I had a feling that one of you superheroes were gonna crash my plane because it's New York."
I loved that moment. That was hilarious and badass at the same time.
I mean, you got the classic thing of he saves the people from the falling billboard, but they think he's the one who dropped it. Spider-Man. Like, at the time, as Brandon Day goes on and this keeps happening, it's like, oh, come on already, stop it. But at this time, it was like, hey, I actually like that. It's old classic Spider-Man. I like that. It's just when they did it every issue after this that it got annoying. And, yeah, you got the whole, she's selling the paper, and I got to give them credit. This is got to be the first time ever the only time ever Dan Slott wrote an issue with her in it, Marla, and she's not bringing up Spider Slayer, so congratulations there.
And I will say, I think the art is a bit better in this issue. And this is actually going to be a continuing trend with the next issue. To spoil my,
I think it looks like a Raimi suit in a little way. It's like it has that eyes from the Mark Webb series, but everything else from the coloring that Niven gives it looks like the Raimi trilogy.
I do think that McNiven here is stepping up his game a bit, and I think that the art is a bit better in this particular issue. So I will give due props there. I loved Mr. Negative, and overall this was a more fun issue. My only complaint was, I'm actually going to go against something you said. The banter with Spider-Man wasn't great, in my opinion. I didn't think his quips were all that well written. I mean, you did have the moment where he punched the tablet, but other than that, I really didn't think Spider-Man was that funny in this issue. But I think the characters were a lot better. So it was definitely a stronger issue for me in general.
The only joke in this issue I didn't really care about, and it's nothing that Spider-Man says, it's that Dan Slott one at the end where it's like, hey, next issue is going to be 22 blank pages. What? Don't believe me? Okay, then it's to be continued. Gotcha. It's like, no, I'm not stupid.
I will say, like, a bit of a nitpick for me, and I will admit this is just pure nitpicking on my part. I don't like how on the recap, like on the first page, in 546, it's always like, oh, this is, you don't recognize the situation? Well, let me tell you how I got here. it's kind of breaking the fourth wall. Whenever they do that in these books, it feels like it's written like the Ultimate Spider-Man cartoon, and I don't like that. I don't like the breaking of the fourth wall that they kind of do on the first page every time. That's just something I don't like.
Like Robbie's gonna kill me if I wasn't already dead, and that's the last panel you see.
No, it's just like on the first page, it's like, this isn't what it looks like, and he's talking to the reader. That's more of a nitpick on my part that I don't like that, but it's just something I noticed. That's a nitpick on my part. I will admit that.
What it looks like. Oh, it's trust me, you don't.
I mean,
yes. Okay, are you happy now? It tastes like cigarettes.
Yeah. I wasn't a fan of the breaking of the fourth wall, but other than some bad jokes and stuff, I felt that this issue was fairly strong. I don't really have much else to say about it. The whole mob plot it's a fairly down to earth Spider-Man plot. It's not a big supervillain plot, which is okay, I guess, for this first little story of this brand new day era. It's not I guess they're not blowing their load pretty early, so they're not giving everything. They don't give everything away in the first issue. They don't set their standards so high. So I guess that's pretty good.
Like I know what you mean. Like the easy way would have been Menace. The first story would be Menace, because it's like, oh, here's a new Goblin, the new continuity. Here's your first villain, and it's a new Goblin. I could see them. They could have done that, but they didn't. They decided, no, we're gonna go negative first. He's a more down-to-earth. He's kind of like a Kingpin, a mob villain, so you have that nostalgic of Silvermane and the Kingpin from the 60s and 70s, so you got that kind of nostalgia going on. So, but it's still a completely new, fresh take. And then next month, we'll give you the Goblin arc. But it felt like, they could have done that, but luckily they didn't. They said, no, we're going to give it more down-to-earth, this whole kind of mob storyline, which I love that. And I love the one panel where Peter jumps in to save them. He's coming in to save all the gangsters. And they look at each other like, kill him, and they just start shooting up the place at him. Because it's like, what do you think that was going to happen?
He even says he even says under his breath to himself, like, I can't believe I didn't see that coming.
I mean, any other time you do that, you're punching them all in the face, and he expects this time they're not going to shoot at him. And I do love how they're commenting on events currently in the books, too, in the other titles, because they're all like, what's going on with that one Hood? Oh, that's not a gang I'm talking about. I'm talking about literally the Hood who's fighting the Avengers.
Yeah, overall it's a fun issue. So I think if we're ready to move on to overall quote unquote ratings, yeah, I give this issue a thumbs up.
Thumb up here too.
All right, and just moving on to Amazing 548, part 3 of this story. Basically, Spider-Man wakes up and he's like, what? I'm still alive? And he figures out that it's actually a DNA-specific potion that Mr. Negative concocted, and it only affects members of the mob and their families and their bloodline or whatever.
Yep.
So basically, he learns that the mob families, their wives took... the mob family's wives and children went to, I believe it was the circus that day.
Yep.
So Spider-Man goes there to save them. He ends up fighting Mr. Negative's goons. Basically, Mr. Negative gets away with a sample of Spider-Man's blood, so he can now make a potion that will affect Spider-Man and any of his blood relatives. But of course, the catch is that Peter's blood relatives are gone, and he only has May Riley Parker. So Mr. Negative gets away with that. Meanwhile, Dexter Bennett comes in and basically declares the Daily Bugle as his own. And Joe Robertson has a great line. For your own personal safety, I'm going to pretend that these last 2 minutes have not happened. I thought that was a pretty good line. And Peter Parker basically continues with his brand new day. And that's basically this issue. There's not a whole lot to it. It's very much a third act kind of issue. Overall, once again, I really did enjoy this issue. I thought it was a pretty solid story. And there really wasn't a whole lot to it, but it was a solid ending, I felt. Overall thoughts on Amazing Spider-Man 548?
Yeah, it's a good story. Uh, it's it's a really good ending. I like the twist of oh, he has to go save these mobsters' family because Negative put it at because the one mobster from the issue before, he's the only member who has both mob families' blood in him because he's the son of two of them. So that's how both families are going to be affected by it. And he's basically killing two birds with one stone. And I love that twist. And I love it how Peter, he happily gives Negative his blood sample because Aunt May is not a blood relative and she's the last relative he has. So if anybody dies, it's me. He's like, I would rather live, but at least I know my family won't get wiped out by the thing if he ever found out my secret. And I love that kind of twist to it. And you got like the Kim helping the taxi driver, and then you got the kind of Harry moment where he's like, "It's you, it's always you. Why are you always in my way?" And it's like, whoa, is he going to be the Goblin? Are they setting up him as Menace? I mean, I like that. When you read that, I was like, are they setting up the Harry's Menace, or what? Because at the time you didn't know. You didn't know who Menace ended up being. So it was kind of like, oh, is Harry going to be it? And another thing, though, I think really hurts it is the death of the Spider Mugger. Because it sets up with him being choked out, and the guy says, whose is this? And he says, it's his. I stole it from him. And then at the ending, when Peter talks about how great his brand new day is, they show the guy driving away smirking, knowing, I got Spider-Man shit. I know who he is. I got his information because I got his credit card. And they did nothing with it.
Yeah, I realized that I'd forgotten completely to touch on that plot during the recap, but that probably is because I cared so little about it, because it really does go nowhere.
I mean, you could say the mind when he got there, the mind block kicked in. He got all these, credit cards, and he says, I don't know which one it is. Or I can see them maybe if they did that, like he gets back there, and then the mind block kicks in when he starts looking at all the credit cards and all the IDs and the driver's licenses, and he goes, okay, which one is it? And he, for some reason, he can't connect the dots which one it was. I'm okay with that, but at least show that in the book.
And obviously, this story does set up the Spider Tracer killer, which is a story that I never really cared about in Brand New Day.
Well, technically, it got started in this issue when you actually see the tracer that gets used to frame him get launched on a cop car that just so happens to be a cop car where a cop saying, yeah, I like Spider-Man, but if you don't find a murder, you can always just say, oh, it's Spider-Man's fault. Literally, a cop says that in this issue, Peter shoots the web shooter at it, and then you got a thought film that says, gotcha. And it's a zoom in of that tracer on that car, and then you see that cop saying, oh, you can always just frame Spider-Man if you can't solve a murder in New York. So when I saw that, I go, well, then you know that it's going to be Vin and his partner, and I called it from day one. And then when you get the character assassination, it's like, it's Vin and his partner. Who called it? Me.
Yeah, that was a plot, I'll tell you that. So, I mean, but other than that, I did enjoy this issue. I really did. I mean, when you were talking about this feels more like classic Spider-Man, it kind of does feel like classic Spider-Man in the end. He's saving the kids. He's doing everything he can. He's taking responsibility seriously. I liked that about this issue. I really did. So, and another part I want to bring up about this issue.
Oh, right here.
The art is getting consistent.
Here's what I'm talking about right here. Like, read this panel, and don't tell me that they didn't point to the Spider Tracer. It says, one of my Spider Tracers. Gotcha.
Yep. And for anyone who doesn't know what comic he's pulling up right there, that is the Amazing Spider-Man Swing Shift free comic book day issue.
Well, actually, I had to pay $4 for this because I didn't get the free comic book because I was busy that day, so I couldn't pick it up. And then I was happy when I found that this was in continuity, and they were going to re-release it. And, of course, what did they do? They added the manifesto, which was basically explaining the backstory of who the fuck everybody is, and a editor note about what makes Spider-Man single so much better than marriage, and all that stuff. And then they charge you $4 for that.
Yep.
Oh, and they forced the dialogue. Because in the free comic book day one, they left it, up in the air if he was married or not, or if this is post-Civil War, where they didn't really answer that question or not. Where here they outright, added stuff that says, yeah, this is a brand new day continuity.
All right.
They fixed the thing.
A big pro that I want to bring up with this issue is I think Steve McNiven's art in Amazing 548 is very good in this issue. He definitely found where he wanted to be with this final part of the story, and I thought it was very solid for part 3 of this little arc. I really did enjoy quite a bit of it in this issue. It was one of those things where the art got progressively better throughout the arc, and it was just on overall top form throughout most of the issue. Mr. Negative was really cool once again. I really did love the scene where Spider-Man gave up his blood like that. It was just an overall fun story. I mean, there's not really much more I can say about it.
Yeah, it like I said, it set up Brand New Day to a T. It was perfect. Even rereading this, I felt nostalgic about, wow, I can't wait to see the cool adventures of a modern-day version of the Romita era or the Gary Conway era Spider-Man or the Tom DeFalco pre-marriage stuff. I'm interested to see how they do this in a 2008 modern take on it. And like I said, slowly after the first 6 months is really good, but then once you get towards, Secret Invasion and then all that stuff, it starts getting down and down and down and down, and then it's, oh crap, Dan Slott's becoming the new solo writer. He wants Carly to be the girlfriend. We got to start shoving that in your throat. You start to see the inconsistency between writer and writer when it came to who could write a character good or bad or use a character or not use a character. So it's kind of weird how this is like a high point, and then it starts to in 6 months. Like the Titanic is starting to sink already on this ship, it feels like, of the Brand New Day era.
Yeah, so
I'm a fan of the Brand New Day era. And I can say that by the end of it, it got to the point of being like, I was happy that they ended it 3 times a month and the Spider Brain Trust and just went to one writer and stuff like that.
All right, so any other thoughts on this issue?
Just that, like I said, I liked it. It was a good start, and it reminds me of being that, like, I was 17 at the time because I didn't turn 18 yet until that summer. So I was 17, I was in high school, and I was game for it. I was still mad because I grew up with the marriage. I wanted it to be Mary Jane and Peter married in this issue so bad. But at the same time, I was like, I gave it a chance. I like it. I'm going to continue reading this. It just sucks that it's not with Mary Jane. And I still feel that when I read it, it's a good story. It doesn't matter that it was the beginning of the post-One More Day era. I liked it. I thought this was a really good story. And it is Dan Slott. At this point, I look at Dan Slott as, he did it. He made a classic Spider-Man story. Oh my God, this guy's God. And now you see me now on the podcast when I bring up Dan Slott how I am.
So I take it you give this issue a thumbs up?
I give all 3 a thumbs up. And technically, because I thought we were going to read Swing Ship, so I reread that, I give that one a thumbs up too, because it is kind of like at part 0 of it.
I give 548 a thumbs up as well. So that's going to do it for the reviews and also for this episode of Spider-Man's Tangled Web Show. Thank you to everyone who has tuned in for this episode, and thank you to everyone who's been watching the show as we've gone on. We're about 3 months into the show's run by now, but I will keep in mind that 2 months of those we were not really on the air. So, but in the end, James, as we steal a segment from AGR, shout-outs?
Yeah. Shout-outs. I was not really open for this yet, but shout-out to us. A reminder, next week we got our big interview, so come check out AGR with our interview with John Tilligan. It's going to be at 7 West Coast time, 9 o'clock my time, 10 o'clock East Coast. You get the drift. If you're from another country watching this, just go to some world clock and sync it up. So please check that out. It's going to be awesome when we do that interview. And this week we might be doing on AGR the commentary for the first movie. So check that out. Another shout out is to Star Wars, because I got my Star Wars shirt because I saw the trailer for the new Star Wars movie. It looks fucking awesome. I can't wait to go see that. And my last shout out is going to be a big one. My last shout out goes to a friend of mine on the Power Ranger boards who kind of got called out and treated like crap by Dan Slott this last few months. Cameron Samurai, if you're checking out the show, you're a friend of mine on Ranger board. You're an awesome dude, I think. Don't listen to the hate from Dan Slott. There you go. Boom.
All right, my shout-outs. Shout out to Marl, Stan Lee, Steve Ditko, all of them. Of course, if it wasn't for them, we wouldn't be here. Shout
You
out
stole
to...
that line from me.
Yes, I did steal that line from you, but you're here, so I can do that.
Yeah, I know.
This is going to become a running gag on this show, so I'm going to keep it going. Shout out to Andrew Garfield and Mark Webb.
You're not going to keep this up, are you?
I'm just doing this because I know it bothers you.
Dude, if we get to our 10th anniversary and you're still, you should still be Spider-Man, I'm going to come over and slap you. I'm just telling you that right now. 10 years.
To be honest, I really don't ride the he should still be Spider-Man train. I just bring it up because I know I'm just being a tool by that point. So I just do it to kind of piss. I'm pretty sure
that's why Jan didn't show up this week. Because Jan knew movie talk. John's going to go on a rant about Mark Webb and all that stuff. Then that's why he's not here. That's why we haven't seen Thomas. That's why we haven't seen Jacob in forever. It's because they don't want to hear you go on about Mark Webb and Andrew Garfield.
Haters gonna hate. Haters gonna hate, man. I forgot who my next shout out was going to be. Oh yes, I have another musical shout out, but it's not the same person this time. Even though when I say the name, you're gonna think it's the same person, but it's actually not because they kind of almost have the same name. Alex G. Not Alex Goot from last week. Alex G. One, the big difference is that she's a female. Alex G. Look her up on YouTube. She should be under Alex G Music 7, I believe her YouTube handle is. Alex G is her professional name. Look her up if you are a fan of really good, just either strong ballads or just fun songs. Just look her up. Really good voice. I really think she could go places. I really do. Really good voice. And my final shout out of the week is to all the podcast panelists who aren't here. And final shout out of the week. I'll give a shout out to someone or something that is just random. I'm gonna give a shout out actually to people who say that water is only 99 cents. Because when I went into a gas station today to buy some water, because I was out of desperation and I was horribly parched. Most of the time I have to pay like $1.50, upwards of $2 for a bottle of water. I got bottled water today for 99 cents at a gas station. It was the cheapest water I've bought in probably 5 years. I was blown away that it was 99 cents. I really do. I really was. So shout out to let's look at the brand here. Let's do shameless plug. Enon Springs natural spring water, 99 cents. Good on you.
You went from shouting out to a Hollywood director and actor to water.
I literally went down the totem here. Okay.
Water bottle. I'm now calling you Troy. People will get if they know me, they'll get that reference. But you're now Troy with your water bottles.
Oh dear gosh, I know what he's talking about. That's not a good comparison. Okay, let's get off this podcast. Let's get off this podcast before I'm turned into Mac. Later, people.
You're a robot?